Hello, you are on the World in Documentary channel. Embark with us on another important episode in the history of humanity. In today's video, we will talk about the laws of Hammurabi. Travel with us on this journey to times gone by. The Code of Hammurabi, the first great law of humanity. Hello, adventurers of knowledge. A long time ago, in a distant land, there lived a wise and just king. He was known for his kindness and wisdom. He won great victories and expanded his domains beyond imagination. His subjects prospered under his reign. He was also worshipped by the gods. There was one god, however, who longed for his attention. He longed for the king to invoke him. He begged him to give him a monument so that future generations would know of his greatness. God granted his request and gave him an oracle to record the laws that the king had promulgated. In the 21st century, we witness trials every day. For many, it is part of the routine. For others, a unique but necessary event. However, few have stopped to consider that the first legal act of humanity dates back to around 1800 BC. Get ready, adventurer. Dive into this sea of knowledge and discover the Code of Hammurabi. In a world where justice reigned through revenge, the Babylonian monarch left a lasting legacy. Before Hammurabi, each city-state in Mesopotamia had its own laws. The laws of Eshnunna, for example, were applied in the city of Lagash. The laws of Ur-Nammu governed the political and social life of Amorite. The laws of Zimri-Lim were popular in Mari, and the laws of Samsu-Iluna governed life in Larsa. The laws of Hammurabi, in turn, sought to unify the lands under a single system of justice. Between the Tigris and Euphrates rivers, Hammurabi, the lawgiver, unified kingdoms. He left his name engraved in stone, gold, and stele. He expanded the domains of Babylon, conquering cities, fortresses, tribes, and peoples. He created engineering works, such as the Hanging Gardens, built temples and libraries, and encouraged artists and poets. But his greatest achievement was creating a code of laws. Babylon was a vibrant metropolis, a place where people lived and worked side by side. Different races, cultures, and social classes cohabited the capital. At the top of the social pyramid lived the nobles. Below them were the free men and merchants. Next came the servants, peasants, and workers. At the bottom, the slaves. In this jumble of customs and social classes, the king saw a major obstacle. To pacify it, he decided to enact a set of laws. Hammurabi sent messengers throughout his empire to gather the best judges, lawyers, and scribes. Gathered in the palace of Babylon, the king ordered them to create a fair and equitable code of laws. From then on, the kingdom would be governed by law. At the sacred site of Eshnunna, in the middle of the fertile plain between the Tigris and Euphrates rivers, Hammurabi's legislative genius found its muse. Apocrypha, historical records, and cuneiform inscriptions reveal that the legislative genius sought inspiration in the earlier laws of Sumer, Akkad, Assyria, and Elam. Hammurabi personally oversaw the creation of the code, which was refined and perfected. A year after its promulgation, the code was carved into a block of diorite, a volcanic rock, and placed for public consultation at the sacred site of Shamash. The code, inscribed in 282 laws, determined punishments for crimes. At that time, crimes were classified into three categories: property crimes, crimes against public order, and crimes against family order. The first law provided punishments for robbery, theft, and fraud. These were considered bodily harm. The second category included laws regulating the conduct of commerce, work conduct, and contracts. The third and final category defined crimes committed against family members, wife, children, parents, brothers, and sisters. In this last category, the punishments were more severe. Let us analyze the famous saying, "If the son insults his father, pulls out the hair from his head, he will be punished with the requested penalty. If the father has insulted him, the son will have the right to return the insults." The Code of Hammurabi not only punished the crime, but also the habit. Yes, to prevent an argument from turning into physical aggression, The king of Babylon established that if a person insulted another, the judge would decide whether the response was acceptable. In the ancient code, rape was considered a heinous crime, regardless of physical injuries. To protect marriage and offspring, Hammurabi established punishments for adultery and prostitution. Another salient point of the code was the protection of the gods. Unfortunately, faith and superstition went hand in hand. Divorcing a deity was a punishable crime. After all, for the Babylonians, the gods did not tolerate abandonment. For this reason, the code punished atheists, those who blasphemed, profaners, and unbelievers. The judgments of the code sought to reconcile the parties involved in a conflict. In most cases, the main route was the restoration of social order. It was not common for an accused to defend himself in court, but the code provided that in certain cases, the defendant should tell the truth. In cases of unfounded accusations, the accuser ran the risk of being punished, as he would lose his honor and prestige before the community. For investigation purposes, the code determined the use of material evidence, witnesses, and oath. If the judge found the jury lacking evidence, the accused would answer by means of the water test, a popular test in Mesopotamia. The defendant drank water from a vessel that had been heated to flames. If the substance was poisonous, the defendant was innocent. Otherwise, the verdict was guilt. The fire test, in turn, was used in cases of adultery. The woman was accused. If she wanted to prove her innocence, she would undergo a fire test. If her husband condemned her, the code determined that she would be burned alive. At a time when women lived under the shadow of oppression, Hammurabi's code provided some guarantees. Women could manage property. There was, however, a high price to be paid. She could only do so under the tutelage of a man, father, brother, or uncle. Hammurabi, the lawgiver, died after 43 years of reign. His conquests and glories echoed throughout Mesopotamia. New nations were born inspired by Babylon. Hammurabi's successors maintained Hammurabi's code, improving and expanding it. Years later, the Babylonian Empire would be subjugated by other peoples, such as the Assyrians, Chaldeans, and Persians. The code, however, withstood the test of time and inspired other codes of law in Israel, Persia, and the Roman Empire. Centuries later, the diorite stele remained standing. It was discovered by chance by English explorers. Martinus, an archaeologist, found the stele in 1901 in Susa, capital of the ancient kingdom of Elam. The original piece is now in the Louvre Museum in Paris, France. Copies of the stele are scattered throughout museums and universities around the world. Critics of Hammurabi's code argue that it defended the status quo of society at the time. It defended the supremacy of the king, the oppression of subjugated peoples, and the tyranny of gender. In its favor, Hammurabi's code was the first to abolish private revenge. Hammurabi's code was the first to provide punishments for crimes and the first to provide rights for women. The stele of Hammurabi is one of the 7 monuments of the ancient world. Dos poucos documentos da época, foi o primeiro a reunir e isolar leis. The Code of Hammurabi was the first written code in the history of humanity. The Code of Hammurabi is a milestone in the history of civilization. Together, we unravel the mysteries of the past and honor the memory of those who combined faith and law. We address the laws of Hammurabi, and so we come to the end of another episode of the history of humanity. And in the next episode, we will talk about an extremely important milestone in history, the Exodus and the Hebrew people. If you are enjoying our videos, subscribe, like, share, and activate the bell so you don't miss any videos. Until next time. However, few have stopped to think that the first legal act of humanity dates back to around 1800 BC.